Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Career Expert Roundtable. I am Bill, the company's expert, and with me, as always, is Abby from Life Work Balance. And we are here to answer your questions. How you doing, Abby?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me again, Bill. It's always great to see you every 2 weeks, and
My
hopefully we
pleasure.
have some good questions come in from our viewers. That's
Absolutely, yes. So we are here to answer your questions. So if you can see our faces on whatever device you're using to do this, you should see some sort of a chat box in the vicinity of our faces. Get into the chat box and ask your question. Whether you are watching this live on my channel or on Abby's channel, it doesn't matter. We see your questions and we'll answer them, and anything you're wondering about, anything you're struggling with when it comes to the world of job search, hiring. So anything about resumes, interviews, what else? Work gaps, job interview questions, all that kind of stuff. It's all good.
Yep. And as a note, I'm also streaming this to my Twitch channel. So we've got people from YouTube viewing us. And then I just saw a chat come through, someone saying hello from Twitch as well. So we're trying to reach as many people as possible to provide you with this insight and advice, whatever questions you might have when it comes to your job search or career changes. Send them our way and we'll do our best to help answer any questions that you might have.
Absolutely. And we were just talking about how, despite the economic ups and downs that everyone's experiencing,
Yes.
the fundamentals of hiring really, really don't change, right? They're kind of always the
Absolutely.
same.
Yeah, well, and we get, drawn one way versus another when it comes to news and politics and the economy and the world and the global markets and all of these things. But ultimately, what it comes down to is the job search and the interviews don't actually change. The amount of opportunities might change slightly, but in the big scheme of things, there's not much change. So doing your best to prepare for interviews, the job search, being somewhat strategic about it, will always be in your best interest.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing. In order for things to be newsworthy, you hear about them. Usually, it's amped up to where it's very dramatic and usually very negative. And there really isn't a ton of negative stuff, really, that I at least I'm hearing or I'm seeing in terms of hiring. I mean, the last big thing was like AI, right? Possibly something that's kind of happening in certain corners of the world, or uncertainty over tariffs and foreign
Mm-hmm.
policy and stuff like this. So if you're in an industry that's affected like that, of course it's going to be making an impact. But I think for most people, it's really just business as usual. And the methods that people use to hire have not really been changing in the last couple of years. um, what would you say to that, Abby? I think.
I would agree. I think things are pretty stable and consistent. And while there are some things, like you mentioned AI, that have started to change some things, they're not dramatically changing the process.
Yeah.
So what worked 10, 15 years ago, as long as it was, the online application process and even the networking in person, keep doing what you're doing if you've been doing it.
Yeah. The
Probably.
cosmetics are changing, but like the fundamentals are the same.
Yep.
So we have something here, and I think this is coming in through your Twitch,
From
right?
Twitch.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So they say, I'm 14 and I need help saying the right things in job interviews. Well, first and foremost, good work starting early with practicing with these sorts of things. Being 14, I'm not quite sure where you're located, but that's the age of employment here in the United States. You can't employ anyone less than 14. And so if you're in the United States and you're 14, you're probably looking to get one of your first jobs. I would say give yourself a break. Saying the right things in interviews for the types of jobs that you'll probably be interviewing for is not that big of a deal. You'll want to be honest about your experience, but you don't need to worry about having rehearsed scripts and lots of different experiences that you have to be prepared to share for a job interview. Many times they just want to know that you have some of the minimal skills to be successful in the job, which is usually customer service based, maybe some conflict resolution and teamwork or collaboration. And so think about times that you may have experienced those sorts of things. Anytime that you may have engaged in customer service or communication, or conflict resolution, collaboration or teamwork, in school, volunteering, whether it's with a church or some other group. And you can use those types of examples in your interview answers to demonstrate that you have those skills. But being 14, if you're applying to work for a job with an organization, is probably entry level. And they're probably not expecting you to be an expert. They'll probably give you on the job training and teach you how to do all of the things. So you want to show up, you want to be professional, you want to present yourself in a professional way. So don't show up in flip flops and ripped shorts and a tank top. Dress
with
as
a pina
professionally.
colada.
Yeah. With your, hat sideways and backward sunglasses.
Straw hat and some hay sticking out,
Right. You want to present yourself in a certain way because that's something that they're evaluating. And you want to make sure that you try to speak clearly and concisely, that you're not rambling or using lingo that they may not understand. But for the most part, saying the right things comes down to probably not swearing or cussing, or engaging in like derogatory language.
Yes, absolutely. A big part of it, this sounds like such a cliche to say this, but this is totally true. It's like it matters more sometimes how you say something rather than precisely what you're saying. And in job interviews, a lot of it's going to come down to your attitude, right? If you appear very friendly, if you appear not uncomfortable, like if you look like you're in living hell, like in the job interview, you're all like, like this, that kind of is not super good. So you have to kind of, to a degree, just kind of practice kind of looking and feeling comfortable, even when you're not 100% comfortable. They like helpful people that, want to help out, right? Having that attitude,
being open to learn.
Yeah. Just approachable, agreeable, generally, friendly, that kind of stuff. It's almost like, who would you rather work with? Would you rather work with someone that, you felt you could just come up and ask them, do you mind doing this? And they'd probably be sure, or, there's maybe somebody else that it seems like everything is a problem with them, they want to know precisely what you're going to ask them to do. And, they want to know exactly how everything works. And, they get upset or they have a problem with everything if it's not to their liking. So the attitude really matters too. It's not simply what exactly you say. It's just the general attitude you have. And that's a theme for job interviews, whether you're 14 or whether you're 60 years old, it doesn't really change.
Yep. And this person put another comment in saying, I did an interview for Publix, but they never called me back. So, so what I would recommend is, in any case, regardless of your age and what type of interview you're doing, what type of position you're interviewing for, it's also acceptable to follow up after the interview. I would recommend sending an email or stopping by in person and dropping off a handwritten thank you card and making one more contact with the person that you interviewed with, or the person who, I guess, set up the interview for you. Ask them if they have any feedback for you. If they never called you back, how long has it been? If it's only been a week, then it might just be that long that it will take them to process your application and the interview process for you. If it's been several months, then, following up and say, hey, I interviewed for a job here back in February. I never heard back. So now that I'm on summer break, I wanted to show up and see if there's anything available that I might be able to fill in for. But they're looking for people who are proactive, who are thoughtful, so it's been about 2 weeks. Okay. I would follow up. What do you have to lose? If you heard nothing from them, if you don't follow up, then you're going to continue to hear nothing from them. But if you follow up and you give them a thank you card or you send them an email checking in, that might prompt them to put you back into the system or back into whatever process it might be. And in Publix, which in the United States is like a grocery store chain, there are always positions available. So you may have fallen off their radar, and with reaching out and reestablishing contact with whoever it was that you interviewed with or the HR person, that might just get you back into their process, which can be helpful.
Yeah. The other thing to learn about, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, I'm not sure, but you see the way these things kind of work, like with job interviews, it's a numbers game, which means that, what's standard for pretty much everyone is that you're going to be doing a lot of interviews with different employers. And the standard thing is that you're not going to hear back or it's going to be a no. Now, I don't care if you're the most brilliant, most hireable, most good looking person in the entire world, you're still going to get a lot of no's before you get a yes. That's just the nature of it. And the way you deal with that is that you put out a lot of leads. So you apply to many, many places, right? And the idea is that sooner or later you will get someone saying yes. They say yes to bringing you in for an interview, and then they say yes to hiring you, right? So it's almost like rolling a dice, and getting a 6 or something like that. The first 6, that's your interview. Then you have to roll of those. You then roll another dice, and it's like you get a 6 twice. That's getting the job. So you're going to hear a lot of no's. And the point I'm trying to make is that just the fact that these people are not calling you back, or you know what I mean, like, or they say no or something, it's not a reflection on you. Don't take it to mean like, oh my God, I'm doing everything wrong, I'm unhireable, I'm no good. That's not what this means at all. It's everybody gets that, right? So that's the attitude to take. Okay, so don't read too much in when you don't hear back after something. Okay, just keep moving forward and try and apply for something else.
Yep. And they also put a comment saying, well, what do I say when I follow up with them? And so I put 2 video links into the Twitch chat. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I didn't put those in the YouTube chat. So if you'd like to get those video links, let me know and I'll put them in the YouTube chat as well. But that's a video on how to write a great thank you note to follow up after an interview. And then my best piece of advice after an interview, which is to follow up. So 2 different videos that will give you some ideas on where to start. I think even in one of them, I hand write a note that you can see when it's how to write a thank you note. And so use those as guidance. The other thing that you can do, and if anyone has watched our live streams before, I make a note about this every single time, which is use generative AI like ChatGPT or Grok, and just put in the prompt, I'm following up after 2 weeks of not hearing from an interviewer. I want to reiterate my enthusiasm. I want to let them know that I'm still interested in the position and just wanted to follow up on the status of my application. Can you generate a short follow-up email for me? Something like that. See what comes up and use that as a draft. Don't use it word for word. You want to make it sound like you, and you can use that as a starting place.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you are watching this either on my channel or Abby's channel, get in the chat, ask us some questions. We're here purely to answer your questions, to help you out with job search, any aspect of job search, whether it's networking, interviews, resumes, cover letters, everything. Ask questions. That's what we're here to do. We don't have an agenda or a monologue to give. We're just responding to you guys. There are 30 people here right now. So get in the chat and let us know what's on your mind, and we will do our best to help you out. That's what this is for.
Yep.
And we do these every 2 weeks. So that's kind of the schedule.
Yep. And when it comes to having some strategy with your job search, many people think the strategy is to apply as many times as you can. It's kind of this spray and pray technique, and that doesn't work. So when you are applying to jobs, you want to make sure that you're very intentional and strategic about it. So what does that even mean? It means that you have to know what type of jobs you're looking for. And ideally, you've narrowed down some organizations or at least industries for those types of jobs. Because if I'm going to spray and pray, I'm going to look up administrative assistant. And there is an administrative assistant position in every single organization, in every single industry. And so that's a lot of options. And if I have all of those options, then I'm probably not going to submit quality applications. So instead, I might want to say, I'm going to apply to be an administrative assistant in healthcare. Okay, if I want to work in healthcare, do I want to work for a large hospital? Do I want to work for a small local family practice? What do I want to look for? So then you can start to narrow down the types of organizations and industries from there. If I know that I want to be an administrative assistant and I want to do it for car dealerships, that really can narrow my area of focus for applying to jobs. Once I have that really narrowed down and I know the industry and the type of job that I want to apply to, that makes my process a little bit easier, because then my tailored resumes don't have to be brand new every single time I apply to a new job. I likely will reuse my tailored resume, maybe make some small tweaks based off of the job posting, but I don't have to recreate a new tailored resume every time I apply. If I'm applying to healthcare and technology, those two different industries will require very different resumes. So just keep those things in mind. You want to start off being very strategic about the type of job that you're applying to and the industry in which that job exists.
Absolutely. And like Abby says, I mean, it's a little counterintuitive for a lot of people when they're starting out, but because it's like it happens sort of with the internet age when a lot of job search went online. One of the big effects of that was that all of a sudden it became super easy to apply for a lot of jobs. Not only could you discover them, like very quickly, but you could then apply for them very efficiently. You have, it just, you're like, at least in the beginning, it was like email and stuff. It was mostly applying through email. You attach your resume and you send it out. You attach your resume, you send it out. So what happened was that everybody started to do that. And then a lot of the job postings online, they got inundated with tons of applications. But when you actually look at the applications, they weren't responding to the job ad. They were just sort of saying, well, this is what I have, and in some cases that aligned a little bit with the job, but in a lot of cases it was just had nothing to do with the job. The job was saying, you need this, this, and this. And people were sending in resumes and applications that didn't have any of those things. Yeah. So you got it's almost like nuisance applications in a way, They're saying, like, in order to get this job, you have to have a medical degree with experience doing neurosurgery. And then someone would apply to it and say, well, I've got 20 years in construction and I know how to do welding.
Perfect fit.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, that's a ludicrous example, but I mean, it illustrates the point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So later on, as things get more automated, where we are now, you have ATS systems, applicant tracking systems, where you get a computer to automatically read the applications that you're receiving and filter out people that don't have a lot of the things that were mentioned in the job posting, saying we're looking for people that have these things, right? And what they do is they filter the applications by the contents. And if you don't have a lot of the things that match up, it doesn't even get read by a human, right? So that's where we are now. So what has happened over the last, 25, 30 years is we've made this shift to now, in order to get anywhere when you apply for a posted job, you basically have to tailor your entire application, whether that's through your resume or your cover letter and anything else, to be customized to the specific job that you're applying for. You know what I mean? And it's a bit of a shift, because in the past, some people would have like their resume where it was like set in stone. Maybe they get a professional resume writer to help them write their resume, and it's like, here you go. You can make like a gold like stamp of this because this is your resume. It describes you. All your strengths and all the things you have. It's on there, right? And that's great, but the problem is it doesn't really work with this new system that we have now, where people on the receiving end are looking for very specific things. And if you don't have those things, it doesn't go well for you.
Right. Well, and as a kind of a side note that I think is connected to what you were talking about, I just talked with one of my friends who is working to hire an entirely new team in their organization. Now, this is a private, smaller organization. I would say they probably have 500 employees. So it's not tiny, but it's not extremely large either. And so he is responsible for reviewing all of the applicants and the resumes that come through as the hiring manager. Normally, what will happen is in large organizations, you'll have HR or a recruiter kind of be responsible for filtering through the initial set of applications. They might then maybe do a phone screen or something like that to narrow down applications even more. And then they'll send people that they believe are qualified through to the hiring manager, who then can make some decisions about who they want to interview, etc. Well, in this organization, he probably worked with an HR person to get the job descriptions written and get them posted. But now he is responsible for deciding who he wants to interview. He has no HR or interviewing experience as the hiring manager, which can often happen. And so one of the things he's doing is he's using generative AI like ChatGPT and Grok to have it analyze the job posting compared to people's resumes. So their organization is small enough that they don't have a super smart applicant tracking system that makes those decisions for him. So he gets a bunch of resumes and he just loads them into his generative AI platform and then asks it to evaluate the resume based off of the job posting. So that's one way that you could evaluate your own resume. If you write your resume, then you upload it to a generative AI platform and you ask it to compare it to a job description, it will give you some really great ideas on areas to improve. Maybe areas that you didn't mention is in your resume that are clearly highlighted as important skills or preferences for the job. And it might tell you areas that you focused on that are not as important for this particular job. So I would recommend putting a little bit of time into modifying your resume and then having an unbiased platform like Grok or ChatGPT give you that analysis so that you can have some areas to improve or tweak to make very specific to the job posting that you're applying to. Ideally, you work smarter, not harder, by having to do this all yourself.
Absolutely. That's a great tip, actually. You're basically doing the same thing. Like you said, you're basically doing the same thing that the person on the receiving end of your job application is doing. So if you're seeing how you score, basically, and that's something everyone needs to be doing. And if you're the type of person that you're still kind of, rightly or wrongly, you're still kind of stuck in this idea of like, I have one standardized resume that I send out everywhere. If your job search isn't going anywhere fast, I would look at that and I would say like, look, just try an experiment and do this for a couple of applications and just see, if there's any change in the results, because what you're going to see pretty much is you're going to see an increase of the amount of callbacks and things, right? The more you customize it, that's the name of the game.
Yep. Yep.
And this is everything we've been talking about. This is the posted job market, right? So
Yes.
like that's another element too.
Yes. And I don't know the exact statistic now, but it's basically like 80% of all of the jobs that are available to fill are actually not posted. So
Yes.
it's a huge amount of jobs that are out there that are being shared via word of mouth or only on internal job boards or are pasted on a piece of paper on someone's wall that you won't see online. So of the 100% of jobs that are open and available for you to apply to, only about 20% of them are online. So you're really limiting yourself if you just apply online. You need to
Yeah,
build that
I tend to
network.
go off on this topic a lot. I mean,
Yes.
I had jobs, I filled jobs when I was a manager. I filled a lot of jobs that that are hidden jobs, which are what you call those jobs that are not posted, right? Because you don't need to post them because when you mention to just the people around you, if you're the hiring manager, like, oh, by the way, I'm hiring, I have a position to fill in my work group or whatever, you're already getting a ton of suggestions from people that you know and trust. Oh, there's this person, that I've worked with before. They're really good. They can do this, and they're looking for work right now, and kind of, so it's like, you don't hire them because people suggest, but you check them out because it's based on a personal recommendation, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of those. Now, you can get those jobs. Like, that's the thing. Just because you don't happen to know the hiring manager, you can get the jobs by reaching out to employers. It's almost like you're reversing the whole like job search process where you reach out rather than you look for job postings first. You just go to employers. regardless of whether they posted a job or not, because hidden jobs are not posted anyway. Just because they haven't
Right.
posted a job, that doesn't mean anything, right? We're going for
We might just
something
talk
different.
about it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a different process. So it's very hard to explain. I found it's very hard to explain this from scratch in just a few minutes. But I encourage you to look up and do your own research as much as you possibly can about the hidden job market. It'll be to your own benefit. There's a ton of opportunities there. There's more opportunities there than there are in the posted job market.
Yes. Absolutely.
There
so
was.
I've had
Sorry.
some side conversations with the person from Twitch, so we don't need to share those. But we did have 2 YouTube comments come through. One of them says, "How can you tweak your resume? Isn't that
Yes.
dishonest? Greetings from Sweden." Hello from Sweden. Nice to have people from around the world join us. When it comes to tweaking your resume, it's not lying. It's not creating new information that isn't true about yourself.
Yeah, you're
What
not
it is,
making stuff up.
you're
Yeah.
not making stuff up. You're not lying. You're not being dishonest about that. What you're doing is you're highlighting the information that is most relevant and important to the person who's going to be making a decision on if you're the best fit for the role. So many times when I'm making a resume, I might be in the mindset that this is my document. It's showing all of the things that I did, showing all of my accomplishments. I really want to include all of these things. Many times, 80+% of that doesn't matter to the person who's making a decision on if I could be a good fit for the role or not. So we want to change our mindset to instead say, what is most important to the person who's hiring for this job? How can I show that I have these skills, this knowledge, and these abilities that align perfectly with this job to make me the best fit for this role so that they can decide that they put me on the list to be interviewed? Which actually answers that next person's comment, how to shortlist your resume in this competitive market. And you do that by specifically tailoring your resume to the job that you're applying to.
Yep.
This is not lying. It's not putting fake or false information out there. It's not overinflating details to make yourself look better than what you really were doing. It's just displaying the most relevant information for the job that you're applying to. So, for example, I have worked in psychological research. That's been one of my areas of industry that I worked in. And I also was a group fitness instructor. I might not include my group fitness instructor work on my applications when I'm applying to psychological research jobs. They don't necessarily overlap. I might feel really good about my group exercise instructor jobs, and I might be able to find a way to connect those dots. But in most cases, I could leave that off my resume and it won't hurt me by not including those details about my group exercise instructor jobs. So when you're including information on your resume, think about what is most relevant from my past experience to the role that I'm applying to. When you create a resume, it should be 1 to 2 pages long. And so that makes it even easier to be completely vicious with the details that you cut out or that you decide to include. It's not about you. It's about the other person who's going to be reading your resume. When I think about it that way, it's much easier to say, okay, this specific detail is not important for me to include at this juncture. I want to create a very simple, streamlined document that will help them easily mentally check off the boxes that I'm the best fit for this role. And I can't do that if I include all of this information about myself that's also not relevant to the job that I'm applying to.
Absolutely. You used to be a fitness instructor?
Yes, I did. I taught
Like Richard
cycling.
Simmons?
Yes, I used to teach cycling and kickboxing and
Oh, right on. I don't
aerobic
think
steps.
Richard Simmons, he worked with old people though, I think, right?
Well, and
Sweating
Richard
for the
Simmons did
oldies.
do step aerobics, which is also what I taught. It was very fun,
Okay.
creating routines and all the stuff. But so yeah,
Right
I
on.
used to do that. It was one of my first jobs in college. I taught at the college or university's fitness center, and then I did that as like a side job for the next couple of years, and
Well,
also
that's
not
good.
relevant to psychological research necessarily.
I think I might have to do the sweating to the oldies type thing pretty
Yep.
soon. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, that's right. Give myself a heart attack. Where are we here? This is the next one. And this will help me have a chance to get this job. Yes. Yes, it will.
Mhm.
Can a
The
call be
next,
good too? Yes.
yes, and I think the next one is from YouTube, saying it's from Tejas Narkady, they're from Germany. It
Okay.
says, "Do you think that luck matters over hard work?" Now, this is a philosophical conversation that could spin us down a rabbit hole. I think luck is always a part of the process. I think, Bill, you and I had a conversation, and maybe it was several months ago. My time is a little bit
Hmm.
warped, but it's the chance that the organization you want to work for is hiring for a job that you're a great fit for at the same time that you're looking for a job with that organization is
Yep.
so small. So luck is a part of the process.
Absolutely. Yeah.
At the same
It's a very
time,
serendipitous process. I mean, there are many factors that affect, you know, will it work out, right? Um, the biggest factor in determining the outcome is going to be random chance, right?
mhm,
Because think of it this way, it's like you are employable, you're valuable, you have a lot of skills, and there are some people out there that really enjoy dealing with you. You know what I mean? Now, there's a lot of different things you could do, okay? And everybody's situation is that you hear a lot of no's, a lot of rejection, right? Now, when you go down to job interviews, for example, you're pretty much giving the same interview. You know, your past is the same. The thing, your experience and education and skills, they're all pretty much the same. So for every job interview you go to, you're more or less giving similar answers to the same questions when you're asked, right? Um, but a bunch of people don't hire you, and then one of them does. Now you haven't really changed. What's changed is the employer, right? So one employer looks at you, or one individual at that employer looks at you and says, "No, I'm sorry, you're not what we're looking for." And then you go to a different employer or a different individual at that employer, they look at you and they go, "Ah, you're exactly what we're looking for," right? So it's more about them than it is about you. You're the same in all these situations, really, at its essence. So it's just a matter of like you connecting with that employer or that individual at the employer who's out there right now that regards you as the most valuable thing that they're looking for of like all the contenders, right?
yep,
How do you meet them? Like it's partly by design. The more applications you put out, the better quality employment opportunities you source out will help, right? But then also there's a matter of random chance involved. So I mean, there's a lot of factors, and luck or random chance, whatever you want to call it, is definitely a big one. That's why this process is about repetition. It's about not just putting out one lead and then hoping it works. You just throw out a whole bunch of stuff out there. You keep moving and pursuing opportunities until you find someone that just happens to be looking for right now what you happen to have.
yep.
That's what this is.
Yes. And even if you think about like once you get the job, is it about luck or hard work? You could have someone who's doing all of the hard work, all like they're staying late, they're showing up early, they're saying yes to all the things, and then they just still don't get promoted. And so their hard work isn't everything. It's a huge part of it because most organizations can easily spot who's skating by and who's not, contributing or pulling their weight or anything like that. But at the same time, it's not just about hard work. It's about your personality. It's about how you connect with other people. It's about how you communicate. It's about how you are proactive versus not proactive. So there's so many different factors that are combined into the final outcome of whatever it is that you're looking to do. Luck is certainly one of those, random chance, as is hard work.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that everybody here can tell a story of a job you've had where it just didn't work out. Like for whatever reason, it just, the relationship with the people there or with your boss or whatever, either you left or you were let go because it just wasn't working. Maybe you were miserable. Now, hopefully, everybody can also probably tell a story from your past of a job you've had where it was pretty good. You know, you stayed for a long time. Maybe you're in that job now. I don't know. And you know what I mean? Like it just clicked. You worked with some people that you got along with, and your boss was really nice, and they were reasonable, and they treated you well, and you treated them well, and you know what I mean? So like the point is, you haven't really changed. You're still the same person, and under the same stimuli, you will behave the same, right? But you've been in one situation that was a disaster, and then you were put in another situation that was amazing. You know what I mean? So you can see how there's that variation, right? Now, is that luck? Is that by design? Well, obviously, if you're a very agreeable person and you make an effort to be friendly and be accommodating to people, that will help. But so that is a factor. But if you just end up taking a job where, unbeknownst to you, it turns out your boss is a psychopath, your coworkers are sadists, I mean, you could be the most reasonable, agreeable person in the world, and you're still going to go insane, and you're going to leave one way or another. So, it's luck / random chance is a major factor in these things, and job search is the same as
Yep.
those other situations.
Absolutely. Our next comment is from Harish, and they asked how to identify any IT company that hires us are real or fake in these days. It's a great question because there's a lot of fake job postings out there. There's really no way to truly know, because they could even go as far as to making a fake website. But I think the best way to combat this is to identify the true employer and apply directly on their website if they have like a careers page or a job board on their website. So for example, Google probably has a lot of jobs that are like spammed and faked on like LinkedIn and Indeed and things like that. Never apply to a job for Google through one of those external sites. Always apply to a job with Google directly on Google's job search page. So that's my number one piece of advice on how to identify what might be real and what might be fake. Again, if the scammers want to go to the nth degree to get your application, then they might even make a fake website. But if you can identify the original employer and they have a job board directly on their website, or it like links to something, that's where you want to start. You want to avoid applying to jobs on websites like Glassdoor, Monster, Indeed, and even LinkedIn, unless that's the only place you can find those jobs and they have something on their website that pushes you to their LinkedIn. Some organizations will just use Indeed to post their jobs. Some organizations will just use LinkedIn. Many organizations will also have a job board of some sort on their website.
Yeah, and like this is basically, we're talking about fake jobs, right? I mean, the question was about fake companies, but it basically amounts to fake jobs. They posted a job that, it's not a real job, or it's not a real opportunity in some way, shape, or form. There's a list of sort of standard red flags also within the job posting, or when you start talking to them. Like, for example, if they are requiring you to pay up front, that's a huge that's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
Where they say the job pays this much, but in order to get started, you have to buy personal protective equipment or tools or whatever, and so you send that to us, and then then we employ you. It's like no. If they require any really weird personal confidential information, they need to know everything about you. They need to know all your bank information, and stuff like that. That's a big red flag, like right up front.
Yes.
Usually that stuff you can get into later on, but if they're looking for that stuff right up front, that's a huge red flag. Basics. I mean, what else is there, Abby? Like if you don't put your physical address, if you can't discover their physical address, that's also a red flag.
Yeah, if you can't discover their, and like, for example, when I worked as a recruiter, I had some of my job postings get spammed on LinkedIn. And, if you, for example, I was working for a local county government in the United States, but the job location that was fake on the LinkedIn post was in the UK. So just do a little bit of research on the organization before you click apply, because they're trying to get any information from you as possible to then try to use that against you to get money or whatever it is from you. So I agree. If they ask you to pay for anything during the application or the interview process, giant red flag, run in the opposite direction.
Yeah, like what else is there? I mean, very extremely vague descriptions of the role or the title or the
Yeah, if
company, like
they
stuff
don't
like
know
that.
anything about the position, or they're like, I, I think one of the other things that can happen a lot is you could have a fake recruiter reach out to you that's requesting some of this information. So any of the like really personal information from the United States, like if they're asking you for your social security number or personal email addresses, like even those sorts of things, if they're reaching out to you on LinkedIn, you should be able to communicate that to them through LinkedIn and not have to share that personal information until you're actually in a full process. Sometimes they'll even fake the interviews. So many times you don't know for sure, but I would say if you get contacted by a recruiter, look up the organization, Google their name, Google their address, see if they have a job board, see if the job board or the job that they're contacting you for is posted on the job. Like there's a lot of ways that you can kind of do your due diligence in a quick way to just double check and fact check that this is legit before you hand over all of your personal information on a silver platter.
Yeah, like one of the basic stuff is also like if they have a physical address, go to like Google Earth or Google Maps and try and like see, like verify, like, okay, is that a building and it's got their name on the front? Stuff like that should check out, hopefully.
Yep, that's
Anything
great.
that's too good to be true, right? Like, claims they're going to pay you like $1 million a year, but, no education required and, stuff like this. Anything that sounds too good to be true is probably a red flag. You know, there's some standard things there.
Yep. Yep. And if you get that gut feeling that this isn't legit, it's probably not legit. So listen to your
Yeah,
gut. And yeah, I think that that's in general the good advice to go with. And if you can, report it on whatever system you're on.
absolutely. So someone says, what do you recommend to prepare the good resume cover letter interview for the international applicant? Okay,
Mm,
interesting. I actually don't have a ton of experience with people that are sort of like, shifting countries and stuff like that, because
yeah.
you've got the added challenge of that stuff.
Well, and I know, like, for example, if someone from the European countries are applying to the United States, or vice versa, someone from the United States is applying to a European organization. Many times the like words that are used are different. CV, curriculum vitae, is
Yeah,
something that's used a lot in like European areas, and for the United States, a CV or curriculum vitae is usually more academic based, whereas a CV in Europe is more like your resume. There are also like certain requirements. If you're wanting to work in the EU, there's maybe a specific standard application that you use, regardless of what country you're in. So, what I would do is I would first try to look up what some of the expectations are based on whatever country it is that you're applying to. It could vary based on the organization, it could vary based on the country. Watch some YouTube videos from people in those areas to try to get an idea of what those norms might be. And then the advice typically still aligns when it comes to tailoring your documents. You want to make sure that your documents are specific to the organization, specific to the role that you're applying to. In some cases, the CV or resume might be your entire work history, which is different from the United States. So, looking up those types of norms, if you can get in touch with a recruiter or someone from their HR department to ask them those questions, they should have no problem answering those for you. And if they scoff at you and write you off, then maybe it's not the best fit. But I think that if you have some questions about what the expectation is, it's also okay to reach out to the company and ask them directly, just so that you are doing everything in line with what their expectations are.
yeah, and I mean, like as I said, I don't have a ton of experience with this, but I mean, the general approach I would recommend just across the board is having a personal connection with somebody, at the employer. Like instead of like applying, just on a job board, I would try to apply over over networking, where you have a contact and that person is advising you too, or you could at least ask them questions and say, like, should I do this or that or whatever, and they'll be a little bit of your guide, through this process, right? That's far more favorable than just applying cold. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't really have that person that can sort of guide you and advise you.
Right. Right.
Um, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we really addressed all of that, but I mean,
Yeah.
all like, how to do your resume, how to do your cover letter, how to do the interview. I mean, that would all fall under that umbrella. Like, if you have somebody that you could direct your questions to and say, look, when they called me for an interview, when I do the interview, do you think there's going to be questions more towards this or more towards that? Like, what should I perhaps prepare for, more things like this, right?
Yes. And I think, again, I haven't interviewed the people, excuse me, the organizations that I've worked for typically required residency because I worked for government organizations and things like that. So I was not deeply involved with hiring international applicants. Of the international applicants that I've worked with, usually if they're applying as an international applicant, they have, there's some additional information on the job posting when it comes to, like, if you are not a US citizen, we need these things from you. If you are, applying to this different country, then these are the documents that we need from you. So just even reading a little bit more deeper into the job posting might give you some insights. But ultimately, what it also comes down to is I strongly, strongly recommend tailoring these documents, tailoring your resume, tailoring your cover letter for any application, regardless of if it's international or not. And then when it comes to preparing for the interview, you need to understand some of their cultural norms so that you don't offend them um, unintentionally. And you can learn these things again by just Googling what it's like to work in that country, what some of those cultural norms might be. I think in Asia, extensive eye contact is not something that they necessarily enjoy, but in the United States, if you avoid eye contact, that could be a red flag. So learning some of those cultural norms could be helpful. And then same thing with the interview process. I am an expert in the US based interview process, not necessarily as much in international interviewing, but there might be some other norms. For example, one of my most popular videos is about questions to ask at the end of the interview. And I've had several people from European countries comment on that, saying asking questions at the end of the interview is like a no-no. It's not something.
Monaco,
Yeah.
Liechtenstein, yeah.
Yes, that it shows that you're, engaging in like insubordination and so it's just some things that it will require that you do some additional research on your end to try to learn some of those cultural norms.
Like, what I would recommend just as blanket advice for this particular individual who's asking about, the international applicant, it's like, look, let's pretend you're coming from, I don't know, Pakistan, and that's your home country, and you're coming to, say, I don't know, the United States. That's the host country, and you're wanting to be, I don't know, or you're wanting to work as like a medical doctor or something like that. Okay, so what I would recommend in a situation like that, not having any specific knowledge of how to do that or any experience with it, is I would get on LinkedIn. If you're in Pakistan, hopefully you have access to LinkedIn. You can look at, let's say, in major, like, if you know the location in the United States and what city or something, I would do a search there in that city for individuals who are medical doctors, and then they have a Pakistani origin. So you're talking to people who have come from Pakistan to the United States and are working right now as medical doctors. Okay. Now, if you can find such a group of individuals, then you can reach out to them on the same platform, and you might be able to communicate with these people, get like a phone call or something, and say, listen, I'm in a situation that might be similar to what your situation maybe was at one point. I'm in Pakistan. I'm looking to come to the US to work as a medical doctor. Can you give me any advice, any pointers? How did you do it? When did you have a sponsor? How did you cope with interviews? Did the cultural differences that Abby was just mentioning? Like, how did you overcome that stuff? Just as a sort of starting point, I would recommend that approach. Talk to the people that have done that exact thing before and see if you can get any of them to just have like a short phone call with you, or just send messages back and forth if they recommend like a sponsor, or whatever, however it works, right? And start the learning / research process that way.
Yes, I
And
think that's great advice.
yeah, and that will point you at least in the right direction to get more tailored help, uh, so you can understand what's involved.
Yes. I think
Um,
the next question that came through is one
yes,
about the layoffs. Yep. So nowadays, many companies are doing layoffs. How do we tackle this?
Yeah, I mean, companies are always doing layoffs. It's not just a thing right now. It's always with us. It's Abby and I were just talking about this at the beginning of the stream. It's kind of cyclical. It's always there. I don't know really what you can do about this. It's not really up to you.
Right.
Um, if you're working at a place right now and you're worried that you might be laid off, it's for the most part, I would say it's beyond your control. You just do the best you can. And what might be a good insurance policy is whether or not you're getting laid off, is to get into job search a little, just kind of casually, and to see what else is out there and learn about this process and start getting leads, so that if you feel that it's likely you're going to be laid off, you hopefully have some irons in the fire where you have leads that you can pursue and maybe get something immediately.
Absolutely. And I think employers would probably cringe to hear this, but it's true. And that is, employers are out for employers and employees should be out for employees. So
Absolutely, yeah.
you need to do what's good for you. And that means not getting too comfortable and always having your eye on the job market for something that's better for you, something that's a better fit, something that pays you more, something that challenges you more, something that offers you more personal development, something that fits your personal living situation better. Like, you have got to be responsible for that. And if I get too comfortable with a company and I give a lot of loyalty to that company, even though I might be feeling like there is this sense of loyalty, if something happens, the company will fire me or let me go as early as they can if that's what's best for the company. So you need to do what's best for you, which is knowing that there could be layoffs in your industry or in your organization. Always keep your eye on the job market. Always apply and interview just to see what's out there, to see how you compete, to keep your skills up. And if you apply for a job, you interview for a job, you're offered the job, and it isn't the best fit for you, you can always decline and stay at your current job. So think about it as, what is best for me in this situation? And constantly keeping an iron in the fire doesn't mean that you have to apply to new jobs every single day or multiple jobs a day. It just means that you are keeping an eye on the market, you're understanding where things might be going with your current organization, and you will be prepared to go on to something bigger and better for you if the opportunity arises.
Absolutely. I will back Abby up on that one. Companies act entirely in their self interest, and everyone is replaceable. I was a CEO, and I know that probably more than most people. And it's not necessarily like this big, evil, negative, malevolent thing. It's just that, companies exist to make money. And in order to do that, they need people to provide value, to contribute their knowledge and their abilities. And if you have, abilities and knowledge that, a company can use in the furtherance of them making money, then, it works out. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. But, things change, the economy changes, customer habits change. And, what once worked for a company doesn't just work perpetually. They find that old methods just sometimes they're less and less effective, and they have to shift.
Yeah.
So you do the same. Like Abby was saying, companies act in their self-interest. They only care about their bottom line. They don't care about their executives. Everyone is replaceable. Everyone is dispensable. You have to take the same attitude. You have to look out for yourself. And it's great when you stumble upon a situation where you work for an employer or for a boss, even, that there's a sense of personal loyalty, and that's great when you find that. It does occur, but at the end of the day, you have to do what's in your self-interest. It's not personal, it's business. And it will help you to understand what your options are and what's out there. Now, if you're currently employed and you suspect there might be layoffs coming, you're on the inside of an employer, you're on the inside of the organization. So while you're there, you have access to all the people in that organization. You could talk to them. You don't want to advertise the fact that, like, I'm thinking of leaving, but you can ask people, like, are there any other employers that are hiring people in this area, or what's going on? You can take advantage of that while you're there to gain some knowledge about stuff. Maybe someone has a contact in another organization where they are hiring, or they're hiring in a different role, or there's an apprentice program or something that can help you. So keep your ear to the ground while you're on the inside of the employer. There might be some advantages in being able to tap some of those people that you have access to while you're there, and that can lead
Absolutely.
to things.
Well, and I think, we are, as humans, creatures of comfort. And when we get a job, it's very easy to then want to kind of hunker down and do what we do to stay safe and comfortable. And challenging ourselves to continually, be pushing the limits, looking outside, seeing what's bigger and better. That might come naturally to some of us, but most of us want to get comfortable and then want things to stay comfortable. And then what happens is then we panic when something occurs that can jeopardize our job or our stability and our safety and our security. And so you don't want to put yourself in a position where you got so comfortable that you ignored warning signs letting you know that this change was coming. And so it's always going to be to your advantage to continue building that network, engaging in networking meetings, attending special events to grow and develop your skills, to read growth and development books, to attend trainings, to do all the things, to ideally meet someone who might be able to connect you to something new, but to also make yourself much more marketable, just in case worst case scenario happens and you have to jump ship, or you've been pushed off the ship and you have to climb onto a different lifeboat. So it's easy to get comfortable. Don't fall into that trap. Push yourself, hold yourself accountable to, grow, to develop, to keep your ear to the ground, as Bill said, to ensure that if the situation arises where it is time for you to leave, that you can do it under your terms rather than under someone else's terms.
Yes. What was the next question here?
I don't think we have
I think it's
any other questions. Yeah, that was just from kind of the separate Twitch conversation that I was having with that person. But one person, just 2 comments above, says, I've got an interview coming for a support worker. I'm a bit nervous. So I think that might be something that we could discuss, is how do you handle your nerves for an upcoming interview? And I think one thing to keep in mind is there was a study, and don't ask me to name the study because I can't remember exactly what it was, but it essentially was going to Olympic athletes, and they were asked if they were feeling nervous about their upcoming Olympic event. And almost unanimously, those Olympic athletes said, no, I'm feeling excited. So physiologically, the response in our body when we feel nervous and excited is exactly the same physiological response. It's just how our brain is interpreting those physiological symptoms. So that's one technique, is to instead, when you're feeling nervous, tell yourself, I'm feeling excited. My body is preparing me to do really well at this next interview. My heart rate might be elevated. I might be sweating a little bit. All of those things feel like nervousness, but it also is probably excitement too. So retrain your brain to reframe it as excitement rather than nervousness. The other thing you can do if you feel nervous before your interview is prepare for the interview. Lots of times people will just wing it, and it usually doesn't go well if they wing their interview. But if you take the job posting and you put it into ChatGPT or Grok or another generative AI platform and have it generate different types of questions for you, then you can practice answering some of those questions. What I like to do when I work with clients is I also ask the generative AI platform to come up with the 10 core competencies for that job posting. And then those 10 core competencies you can use to build stories around, so that if a question comes up that you didn't prepare for or that you're not expecting, you can say, what competency is this getting at? Is this getting at leadership? Is this getting at problem solving? Is this getting at something a little bit more technical? I have a story that I've prepared based off of the 10 core competencies that I did ahead of time that I can answer this question. And so that's one thing to do. I also highly recommend that you record yourself and listen back to your answers, not necessarily to judge your voice or
It'll be a
anything
fun
like that.
experience when you do that. Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, I hate the sound of my own voice, which many people do. But it gives you an idea of how clear and concise your answers are. You can actually see the timestamps of how long your responses are. It gives you an idea of how many filler words you used. It gives you an idea of, did you sound excited about it? Did you stumble over your words? So I highly recommend engaging in recording yourself, practicing interview answers. The fact that you're here right now is telling me that you're already thinking about these things and you've probably done your due diligence to prepare for this interview. So take a deep breath. It feels, like such a weird situation. In no other setting are you going to be engaging in this type of interaction with someone. Like, job interviews are so fake, but they are pretty important. So if you can get your nerves under control, if you can take that deep breath, then you'll probably respond and have a much better interview than if you were to go in blind or without any preparation ahead of time.
Yeah, recording yourself is also an exercise in how hard one person can cringe. You really see the limits on where those limits are set, and they're a lot further than you think. But Abby's absolutely correct. The key in one word to conquering nerves is preparation. With preparation and experience, you get confidence, and confidence kills nervousness. That's how it works. So, like, think about it. If you did a bunch of job interviews and you noticed after like doing 5 or so job interviews that they're always asking the same questions, and when they do little techniques to try and get you to reveal things, you notice it's always the same techniques that they're using. You know what I mean? And you didn't just do 5 interviews, you did 100 in a row. It's like your attitude towards doing another interview at the end of that would probably be like, just relax. I got this. It's like, what's the big deal? I've done this many times before. I know exactly how it's going to go down, and I know what to expect. And I've heard it all. I've heard every type of question. I've seen every type of interviewing tactic or technique that they use. You know what I mean? So I'm not worried. I've encountered it all before, and I know how to handle myself. I have some fallback answers, that are just burned in right here. If they ask me something that, just I don't know what the answer is, I know what to say, to kind of salvage the situation and make it so that I don't come off bad.
Yep.
So preparation. Now, if you haven't done many interviews in your life, what you can do is you can sort of cheat a little by doing pretend interviews with another person, like a friend or a family member. If you have money, you can pay professionals to help you with this. Yeah, like Abby does that kind of stuff. If you want a professional career coach, Abby does that. I don't, but she does. So check out her site if that's what you're looking for. But if you don't have a ton of money, but you just want to work on interviewing, grab like a friend or family member. Excuse me, and just say like, okay, you be the interviewer, and I'll be the applicant, and let's treat this like it's a real job interview. You can either give them a list of questions, or you could get them to you go on the internet, you make up the questions, so I don't know what they are, and then we'll do this interview. And you do that a whole bunch of times. Now, if you did 3 or 4 of those a day for 10 days, like Monday to Friday and then Monday to Friday, you did like 3 or 4 of those a day, that's like 40 practice interviews, okay, in 2 weeks, you're going to kick ass because you'll notice that like they're very similar, you know, the person tries to ask different questions and tries different things, but you know, it's all variations on a theme. So you do 40 interviews, you know, and you're going to be making mistakes and it's going to feel a bit weird and stuff, but that's actually good because it's simulating what a real interview might feel like. You're going to be a little bit nervous. You're out of your comfort zone, you know, you're on somebody else's turf talking to weird new people that you don't know. Um, you know what I mean? So like that's the cure for nerves and not knowing what to expect. This is how you get good. Practice makes perfect.
Yep.
So, you know, and as you do more interviews, more real interviews, you'll get better and better, you know, and more at ease with it.
And that's why I mentioned with the last comment that we chatted about when it comes to layoffs and how to kind of prepare for those. If you are applying and interviewing kind of constantly, not every single day, but you just continuously keeping your eye on the job market and then applying to jobs that could be a good fit for you and interviewing for those, you'll be able to keep your skills up when it comes to interviewing so that when the job comes up that you want to interview for, that is your next step, you'll be ready. If you just get comfortable and you stay in your lane at your job, you show up, you clock in, you clock out, and you go back home and you don't engage in the market research and those practice interviews by just seeing what's out there and see what could come of this opportunity, then you're going to go through this entire process of being rusty and having to get those skills back and feel more comfortable talking about and selling yourself over and over again for each new job. And I think the next question that comes up is Jared Palmer, who's towards the very bottom of our chat. And they said, sometimes it seems like applying cold, no connections, no recruiter, isn't worth the effort. How much truth is in this? I think that's a great question because it's a crapshoot. If you are applying cold online, there's no reason they should pick you if they don't have a connection to you. That doesn't mean your chances are slim to none. It just means your chances are probably lower than someone who has a connection to that role, to that organization, to that recruiter or the hiring manager. So applying cold is how most people do it these days. And if you want to set yourself apart and you really want to stand out from the crowd, then that's where that networking aspect comes in, where you can identify an organization, a person, somehow a connection that you have to that organization to then get over at least the first barrier to applying to jobs. Bill, what do you have to say?
Well, I mean, the reality is that applying cold is quite effective, but it's probably in a different form than what you're envisioning. I mean, like if you're referring to like the posted job market, you know, just sort of you notice a company has posted a job, so you apply for the job like cold, like you don't know anyone there, you know, you just like, here's my application, you know, I mean, like obviously that is effective to a point. That's the posted job market. That's how it goes. Everything. I mean, Abby can tell you better than me. I mean, everything is set up on the receiving end to process people that you don't know. They're strangers. They have no. They're not a referral or a recommendation. They're just strangers. They're members of the public that, you know, saw the posting and they're responding to it, right? You know, everything is tailored to that, right? And you handle that quite differently than, for example, like some kind of recommendation or referral.
Yes.
So if someone inside the company that is related to the hiring manager, like they work in that department or they work with the hiring manager, like they have some relationship with the hiring manager. I don't mean their family. I mean they just have a working relationship. You know, they recommend to the hiring manager, they say like, oh, you know, you should check out this person. You know, I know this person and they're really good and they're qualified. So, you know, if I give you their resume, would you give them an interview? You know, something like that. Like that's handled completely differently because that person is not a stranger. They're being recommended by someone that the hiring manager presumably trusts, someone who's on the inside of the employer's organization, right? You know what I mean? Now, if you're reaching out, like you're trying to go for hidden jobs, I mean, that's called direct outreach, and that's quite effective. That's how personally I've gotten many things. It's how I established a consulting firm. It's all based on that, but it's knowing how to do it. You go through a completely different process than you do with like applying for a posted job. For a start, and I'll just say this, for a start, when you apply for a posted job, it's like you're going to the bottom of the organization and then trying to work your way up inside. When you're doing direct outreach, usually you start at the top and then try and work your way down. So it's a little bit of a different thing to start out with. So it is effective, but just that you have to know how to do it. And it helps understanding the employer's perspective, like, what people's expectations are and stuff on the receiving end,
Yes. Yep. And I love that kind of reframe that applying cold is kind of the way it's done because
Yeah.
you don't know everyone. But having that connection, the 6 degrees of separation, if you know someone who knows someone who might know someone and they can put in a good word for you, that always can help. But I would say the majority of our experiences applying to jobs is probably cold. If there's some people that I've worked with who got contacted directly by a recruiter and then was, moved forward in the interview process, but many times it is cold. So completely writing that off isn't going to be beneficial to you. I would say engaging in your network, your connections, people that you have a relationship with in some way is part of your overall job search strategy, but it's not just the only job search strategy because there will be times that you may want to apply to an organization that you have no connection to. And that cold application is the only way you can do it.
Yeah, like the other element there is also like if you're looking for a job and you're wanting to reach out to somebody, okay, so by definition, the person that you're going to want to reach out to, they are in a position to hire for someone at your level. So that means that they're going to be at least one level above you, right? You're not going to be peers at the same level. Like if you're a worker and they're a worker, they can't hire you as a worker, right? Usually. I mean, there's exceptions to everything, but that's the general rule. If you're a worker and they're a supervisor or they're a manager, then they may have a job for you. They're in a position to be able to hire someone at your level, right? By the same token, like if you're a manager and they're a manager, they can't hire you because you don't want something down here. You want something at your level. So that means the person hiring for someone at your level would be up here, So you're going to somebody that's above your level. So when you reach out to people, the way it usually works is you're going to people that are above your level. So if you're a worker, that means you're reaching out to supervisors and managers because they're the people that have the power to hire you.
They're the decision makers.
Yeah, if you're a functional manager or something, you're going to be reaching out to like a general manager of some kind.
Director.
If you're a general manager, you're going to be reaching out to an executive. I mean, like that's how these things go. So you have to learn the protocol and the etiquette of like how you approach those people and what can you say to them that is appropriate and professional and that they are likely to want to respond to. The way direct outreach works is usually what you're doing is you're going to hiring people that are likely to be hiring managers. Like if you're a worker, you're going to like functional managers or up or above, and you're saying something along the lines of, here I am and I solve this problem and this is what I can do. And if ever you're looking for that, please let me know because I'd love to work for you. Here's my information. Have a great day. It's very low pressure. Now, a lot of people are just not looking to hire right now, but some people will be just by playing the law of averages, right? Some people, maybe 5% of people, 1% of people randomly that you would send a message to, they are looking for someone with your skills and abilities right now. So for those people, you just landed right in their lap and you're saying, I've got exactly what you need, let me know. And the fact that you reached out to them, that signals quite a few things. It signals you're enthusiastic about specifically working for them. It also signals you have a certain amount of initiative.
You're
And
proactive.
yeah, and the message you send is a sample of your professional ability, how persuasive you are, how articulate you are, how professional you are, how much you understand etiquette and things like this. So they're getting a sort of free sample of what your capabilities are just in that message, right?
And even if they're not hiring, they may still take your resume and file it away for later, saying, hey, we don't have a job for you right now, but if a job becomes available, we're going to reach out to this person because they've already demonstrated those things that Bill just mentioned, that they're enthusiastic and interested in our organization, that you're proactive, that you're thoughtful, that you have probably good public speaking or customer service skills, that you can build rapport, that you can sell yourself. And so even though they might not have a job available for you right now, and you get hired somewhere else in the future, they may still reach out to you with an opportunity that's a great fit for you at that time. So there's
Yeah.
no downside to doing that direct outreach.
Yeah. And I mean, I recommend people look into this because it's just an incredibly useful life skill to be able to reach out to someone you don't know and have them, but do it in such a way that they're likely to respond to you or they have a reasonable chance of responding to you.
Yep.
So that way you can make things happen.
And if you think about it, if you get a random email from someone versus someone shows up to your office and talks to you like person to person, face to face, what are the chances that you're going to remember to respond to one of those? The random email, someone that you don't know with like things for you to do, looking at their resume, things like that, doesn't have as much of an impact as someone who has taken the time to come to you directly and hand you a resume or a business card or whatever it might be. So it comes down to just the experience of that direct outreach. Even those in-person opportunities or a phone call has much more impact than a cold email, which can still do the job. It just might not be as impactful. So consider your strategy with that too. If you're, in a local area where there's lots of organizations that you could just show up to, that's probably going to be worth your time versus being afraid of that social interaction and just sending those emails.
Absolutely. We have a hard stop in about 10 minutes or so. So let's see if we can get the rest of these questions in before then.
Yep. Mary Helen is our next one. Yep.
Okay.
And it looks like she's posted her question twice. So I think we're good with her question, which is, I'm having a difficult time getting hired. And if someone else has experienced this, would you recommend a temp agency or contract work? My answer is yes. So temp agencies are really good at what they do, which is placing people for specific types of work with organizations who need the help. Now, many times temp agencies will then have that employee become a full-time employee of whatever organization they've been placed at. So I have a personal experience working with temp agencies, both as a temp agency like staff member, that I was looking to be placed with an organization, and then also as an organization who uses temp agencies to hire for staff that then ultimately get hired on full time. So temp agencies are a great way for employers to kind of test out potential employees. My experience hiring with a temp agency was I was working with a very small organization. We posted our job on Indeed and then got a lot of applications, did a lot of interviews, and we just weren't finding someone who was the right fit, who had the commitment we were looking for and the skills and things like that. So we then reached out to a temp agency. They sent us 3 applications, interviewed all 3 of those people, and then ended up moving forward with one of them, and then offered them the full-time position once we were sure that this person was going to be the right fit for us. So one of the things when it comes to temp agencies is it's a little bit more expensive for the organization. They're paying the temp agency to basically pay the employee and also provide some other things like benefits and time off and things like that. And so that it can be a little bit more expensive for the organization. But if you as the temp employee are the right fit for the organization, it's great because you basically proven that you're the right fit for this role. They will likely hire you on to a full-time role if it's available, or they'll keep you on a little bit more consistently. You'll also be able to get access to other jobs that you might not be able to. Again, with this like hidden job market, many times organizations will just rely on the temp agencies to kind of post the jobs for them and to recruit for those jobs. So they might not have a job board, they might not have a careers page. There might not be any way for you to get access to that organization beyond a temp agency or a contract work. So I think that's a great option. If you're having trouble doing that, what's the harm? Send your application in, get on their list of people that they might send to organizations, essentially have another organization do the work for you for those organizations that are working with the temp agency. Continue your job search. Don't just rely on the temp agency, but know that that could be a place where leads are generated for you.
Yeah, and we have is it Harish?
Mm-hmm.
Says, because of no proper time management, I have been exhausted with a lot of work in my previous company, PayPal. Because of my regular time, I was able to manage, by the way, personal and professional work. I was forced to work 12 hours a day out of 8-hour schedule without any pay. Can you suggest how to achieve stability in this issue? Well, if they're forcing it on you and that's a condition of your job, I don't see how you have too much choice there other than leaving. You can try and go to your immediate supervisor or manager and discuss it. Just the workload is enough. It also depends on what's in your original employment contract. So you'd have to look at all these things together, and then push for what you can with your manager or whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to decide what you're prepared to tolerate and put up with. And that's why there's advantages on being able to go and look for other things. Although I can appreciate the difficulty of going out and looking for other things, if you're already exhausted working 12 hours a day, that's a tough one,
Yeah. And I am currently pasting some links from my Amazon page to the chat. The first book is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I recommend all the time. One of the habits is putting first things first and beginning with the end in mind. That's really great to personal time management. The other book is 5 Choices, which is another book by Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is the 5 choices to extraordinary productivity. Those are both really helpful when it comes to time management. The other one that I have not yet pulled up yet is the 12-week year. 12-week year. And I listened to this audiobook, but if I were to do it over again, I would get a copy of the workbook or of the actual book and highlight and bookmark and dog ear and post-it note and do all the things. But these 3 books I think are really helpful when it comes to managing your own personal time and setting goals. And ideally also setting boundaries with your organization, which brings me to one more book idea, which is Set Boundaries, Find Peace. And this book is written by a therapist, and it is a great guide for both personal and professional boundaries, knowing when and how to say no to things. Sometimes your job might require you to say yes to certain things because it's just a part of your job description. But many times there's also a way that you can ask your supervisor for help reprioritizing your current list of items that you've got on your plate and things like that. So books, great option. Don't necessarily need to take all of the content from those books and put it all into practice all at once. Hopefully, if you read them or listen to them, there's some good nuggets and pieces of advice that you can start to implement slowly but surely to start to change the way that you manage your time. But Bill is also right that this might be a cultural thing with the organization themselves, that they expect a lot more out of their employees and don't necessarily give you the tools or resources to manage your time well on the job. And if that's the case, run. Unless you thrive in that environment, which other people may be able to for a certain period of time. They want that, hustle, work lifestyle, but we can't really sustain that. So if we can establish good habits and practices early on, personally and professionally, then that will really help us live a more balanced life as we move through our lives overall.
Absolutely. And to wrap this up, to everybody, first of all, thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. We wish you the best of luck in your endeavors, trying to get hired and trying to climb the ladder and move on to bigger and better things. We both have resources if people are looking for different things. As I mentioned earlier, Abby is a career coach. So if you're looking for someone to work with you on a one-to-one basis, she can do that. Go check out her website. So, start with her YouTube channel. So Life Work Balance. If you're watching this on my channel, there should be a link in the description box right under this live stream to her channel. So if you're looking for a career coach or anyone to work with you on interviewing and tailoring resumes and all that kind of stuff, check that out. What I basically do, I don't really do one-to-one consulting with people, but I do have courses. So if you're interested in learning about some of the networking stuff I was talking about, I touched on today, check out my courses. I've got a course called Get Hired. There's also a link to that in the description box under this video. I have another course called Write Like a Professional, which is about basically all the communication skills that I had to learn between being a supervisor and being a CEO. I put them all into one course, so you can check that out if you want to learn some of the above average communication skills in an organization, and that will make you a contender for upper management type jobs, or like, one level up from where you are. You'll be seen as a contender for that kind of stuff.
Well, and while I haven't taken your course, Bill, those types of communication skills are beneficial at any level. And if you're wanting to advance in your career, really honing those skills and getting good at them is going to be key to your overall career success. So
absolutely. Yeah. Sure, communication is a huge thing. And a lot of if you're a technical person like me, or you have a technical background, you've had technical jobs, people like us, we have a blind spot, and that is that we don't really have an awareness of how important that stuff actually is. And a lot of times it comes from a lack of respect for that type of stuff in general. It's actually way more important than you realize. Perhaps it shouldn't be, but it is. And it's very unfortunate that some incredibly bright people that have the technical chops are being held back because they don't have some of these soft skills that, don't take that much to learn. If you've been to university for many, many years to learn technical stuff, but the reason you're not hired is because you don't have a thing that you could have learned off the internet in a couple of months, that's a real tragedy, So whether you take it from me or from whoever, learn a lot of those soft skills, tack them on. They will really open up a lot of doors for you in your career.
Absolutely. And I've got one more book recommendation kind of along those same lines, which is EQ 2.0, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. The book link that I just put in the chat has a self-assessment that you take before you read the book and then 6 months after you read the book. And there are basically 4 different areas that it talks about when it comes to emotional intelligence. You've got to know yourself and then how you relate to other people. And so if you feel like you're struggling on that communication aspect with connecting with other people, with having some empathy, things like that, check out that book, because it will give you the ability to compare where you were before you got some knowledge of the concept of emotional intelligence, and then 6 months later, kind of what you've learned, how you've been able to implement some of those things. And it's a really easy to read book. It's enjoyable. It uses some real world experiences. It's by Travis Bradberry, who's one of the leading researchers in emotional intelligence, which is the basis of connecting with and communicating with others.
Right on. Okay, excellent. Well, we're going to be back, and we're actually breaking the schedule, aren't we? We're going to be back next Monday, right?
We are, the 18th.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll be back in 7 days, same time. And if you have any more questions, you can come back then, and we'll do our best to help you out. Other than that, thank you very much for being here. You guys are awesome. And we will see you soon. Take care.
Bye, everyone. See you next week.